Hey again, everybody. How's it going? Just wanting to check in. So, I'm still a teacher. I haven't quit yet. The last couple of weeks have felt a little more settled. We started with a staggered entry, so this is the first full week I've had with all of the kids in my class. And I had some really awesome moments with my kids, and that felt really good. And even though things still are pretty up and down for me emotionally, I'm starting to feel like maybe I'm finding my footing in this pandemic schooling thing, which is awesome. When I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about in my next video, the thing that kept coming up was emotion. I don't think I'm alone when I say that I've been experiencing some pretty big emotions lately. This is something I've noticed in myself. This is something I've noticed in my friends and colleagues. And it's something I've even noticed in strangers at the grocery store. It seems like through the course of this pandemic, our emotions have been really, really close to the surface. So this is a huge topic, and I realized as I discussed it with colleagues and some of the close people in my life that I really can't talk about everything I want to talk about in a short video. And so what I want to do today is just touch on a couple of points and tell you a little bit about my journey with learning to live with my emotions. So, way back when I really started in earnest to look at my self-care and to think about my wellness, I had this belief that if I did enough yoga and if I meditated enough and if I went to therapy enough, I'd eventually get to a place where I'd be living a life of bliss, where the difficult and uncomfortable and yucky emotions I'd been having would just kind of dissipate and they wouldn't show up anymore. And that's what I was aiming for. And then that kind of all got turned on its head during a yoga class. So I was attending a yoga class at Wanderlust, which is a big yoga festival. And one of my role models was teaching that year. Her name's Sean Korn. If you don't know her, she's an internationally recognized yoga teacher. She's also a social activist and most lately an author. And she's somebody that I have followed. She's somebody, I've watched a lot of the videos that she's done. I've read a lot of the interviews that she's done. And she's definitely somebody that I look to as a role model and somebody that I kind of figured was living that life of bliss that I aspired to. And so I attended this yoga class and we went through all the different poses in the class. And then at the end of the class, she had us all gather around her. And she started talking about her own personal journey. And then she started to talk about something that made me really uncomfortable. She started to talk about the emotions that she experiences in her own life in the present time. And she shared having feelings of absolute rage and the need to, for lack of better words, have a tantrum. And she shared about days where she felt so sad and despondent that she didn't want to get out of bed. So here was a person who I believed was living this life of bliss that I aspired to. And all of a sudden she's telling me that that's not the case. So now I had to reframe my thoughts on emotion. Instead of believing that one day I wouldn't experience difficult and yucky emotions anymore, I learned that those were never going to go away. That's just part of being human. It's part of who we are. So bliss, a life of just happiness and joy, wasn't going to happen. I had to learn to navigate some of these more undesirable emotions that I didn't want to be having. An analogy that's really helpful for me is the analogy of a weather forecast. Now, as a person living in Alberta, I know that even if I wake up and it's sunny and beautiful outside, that doesn't mean the whole day is going to be like that. There could be a storm. It could be +10 one minute and then snowing and -5 the next. The weather in Alberta changes really, really quickly. And that's very similar to our emotions. If you think about watching a storm, you think about before the storm and the clouds building. And then there's that moment where you feel the breeze and it feels colder than it did. And things are starting to shift. And the clouds keep building, the sky gets darker, And eventually the clouds are right over top and they open up and the rain pours down and there's thunder and there's lightning and it's crazy. But then the rain starts to slow, the clouds move off, sky's clear, and it's calm again. So it's very similar to our emotions. Our emotions are constantly building, changing. Sometimes we have an emotional storm. Something that I was told once, and I can't remember who told me, but they said when we're in the midst of a really difficult emotion, something we can take solace in is the fact that that emotion is not going to stay there forever. It will change and it will shift. And that isn't always very helpful when I'm right in the middle of an emotional storm, but it is something that I kind of keep at the back of my head, and it is something that I've leaned on to help me get through. So a really simple practice that I would encourage you to try in the next couple of weeks is just taking a minute or two every day to check in with your internal emotional weather forecast. Notice how you're feeling that day. Pay attention without judging the emotion that you're feeling as good or bad. It just is. Sit with that feeling. There may be days where you find yourself judging, and that's okay. It happens to everybody. Just try again the next day. See how that goes for you. See if it's helpful. Yeah, I think that's all I have for today. I am planning a few more little videos on emotion to delve a little deeper into the topic, but I'm going to leave you with that for today. So I hope that you have a really great week. I hope if you're a teacher, even if you're not, that you're starting to feel things settle out, that you're gaining your footing a little bit. And just know that I'm thinking of you and sending you lots of love and good vibes. Have a good week.